Now, the 10-minute drill.
This is a big one.
Brought to you by TireOutlet.com. Wholesale prices, premium service.
Let's go, let's go, let's go.
Hit it. All right, a little concepts rationalizations for you and a little prize pack at the end of this deal when we get done. Beef just said Troy Brown was the leading receiver 17 years ago when the Rams and Patriots played, and what I thought of was Troy Brown is a guy that the cornerback starved Patriots one year due to injury or whatever played at cornerback, just like 18 years later in the middle of this season when they were struggling at running back and everybody was out. Patterson went in at running back and looked great.
Yeah, he said, well, look what he did. He was running the serial killer before he got into his trouble.
Bill Belichick
remember?
and his staff are so good, Belichick. But again, they take these Trenton Brown. I tweeted last year, I saw Trenton Brown in San Francisco playing for the Niners. I go, man, Trenton Brown's better in the NFL than he was in college. Well, somehow my tweet got to him, and he fired back at me about something. I can't remember what he said. He didn't. I just remember a negative, but I meant it. It was a compliment, and in essence, Trenton Brown. Remember how big he is?
Yeah.
So the Patriots pluck him from the Niners. He's like 6'8", 380. He starts every game at left tackle. They let Nate Solder go, and they don't miss a beat. That Skarnecki guy must be a hell of an offensive line coach. We know how good McDaniels is, but it's Brady and Belichick. But they do have continuity on their staff. They've had some of their guys for 15, 16, 17, 18 years.
And you only think of all the turnover because their coordinators are constantly getting hired, and Flores will probably be next when he goes to Miami. But
and then those guys go off and don't do as well because Belichick is the difference.
Let me ask you. Let me start the 10-minute drill with this. Then are we guilty of currency when we value just how impressive the Patriots are, or does this? And I'll tell you what I mean. I mean, the Boston Celtics won 9 out of 10 in the 60s.
Oh yeah.
The UCLA won. I can't even remember how many in a row.
Sure.
Look, people forget, but the San Francisco 49ers from 1981 to 1994 went to playoffs 12, every year but one and won 4 Super Bowls. I mean, so we have seen iterations of this kind of dominance. What amazes me, though, about the Patriots, those teams had a number of superstars. Those other dynasties.
Yeah.
I mean, tell me anybody memorable outside of Tom Brady when this is all said and done.
Yeah. Yeah. Like normally you'd pluck in a dynasty like this, you would pluck a dozen guys to Canton.
Yeah.
And you're going to be, some will make it just because we got to put somebody in there. Right?
The Steelers of the 70s did it.
Oh, loaded.
The amazing thing about this is that it's 18 years. I mean, we've seen short bursts.
Yes.
I mean, 18 years, Dan. The guy's going
76.5% of the time they've gone to the conference championship. 53% of the time they've gone to the Super freaking Bowl.
Tom Brady, Dan. Okay,
9 Super Bowls.
Just for a reminder.
9.
The Super Bowl started in the 60s.
Yeah.
Okay?
Mm-hmm.
Tom Brady now is, in essence, been to 20% of them.
Yeah. Yeah.
His career began in 1990, 8. It's simply unbelievable. And
if anybody...
does anyone come close in your mind to matching as far as sports dynasties? The Braves won 14 in a row, but they only got 1 title.
Yeah,
I mean, there have been impressive... I mean, you probably have to
maybe the 60s Celtics, but there wasn't as much competition either. I mean, and you didn't have to go through.
And UCLA just stacked the deck. So what about Alabama right now with Saban?
Well, and what's funny is like every year we try to come up with, the Patriots have the formula. They host the first playoff game. They skip wild card weekend. They play at home where they're unbeatable. Well, not this year. This year they beat the 2 best teams in the AFC. This year you give them all the credit in the world. And then they went on the road and beat Kansas City in a hostile environment.
I don't know how anyone...
First time, by the way, both 2 number 1s lose on conference championship in 2 overtime games.
Well, the home teams...
Fascinating stuff.
The home teams had both won the last 5 years in the playoffs.
Yeah. Lost in the bad call, and we'll talk about the bad call.
You give the Rams, by the way, any chance of winning the Super Bowl? I give them none. It's like 0.
I'd pick the Patriots right now, but that's fine. Lost in the horrible call by the NFL. And no accountability by the league, Bush League, in a billion-dollar industry. Billion-dollar industry is the fact that the Rams have a kicker who drilled a 57-yarder that would have been good from about 70. I mean, nutted it.
You knew he was making. Sometimes you can feel a guy's going to miss.
Should we
Sometimes I just knew he was going to make that kick. How
Can we
how
talk?
risky though?
I want you just for this 60-second period to talk about some of the good things the Rams did yesterday, because you're not going to get near the credit you deserve, LA. But for these 60 seconds, Jeff Prosser is going to give the LA Rams credit for going to the Super Bowl, even though there should be an asterisk next to their name.
Well, first and foremost, the Friday night meeting that they had with Ocean 7, that happened over at the Marriott Marquis.
That's not what I asked you to do.
He met with Bill Vinovich and the rest of his crew. They went ahead and
not what I asked you to do.
They went ahead, and the Rams.
He's not doing what I asked him to.
The Rams also, before the game, right as the game was ending, they went ahead and saddled up the donkeys.
I wanted you to give some comments.
So Ocean 7.
Positive comments.
They saddled the donkeys so Ocean 7 could start braying their way towards Slidell, where they could lay low for a while after murdering the Saints fans, after stealing the Saints Super Bowl appearance, after the fraud and felonious theft that occurred. But the Rams, I'll tell you what the Rams did yesterday that was impressed me. That game looked like it was going to get away from them. You know, the Rams, they held them to field goals early. And, you know, even after that turnover. I mean, if that game is 14-0 and then 21-0 instead of 13-0, you know, the fake field goal and then the field goal wouldn't have matched something. So I think what the Rams did better than anything in a first quarter where the Saints crowd was as loud as ever, the Rams offense was doing nothing, and the Saints were, by turnover and drive, knocking on the doorstep 3 possessions in a row to hold them to 13 there instead of 21, kept them in the game until they got going. I thought Jared Goff played terrific too. He hit, you know, it wasn't one guy. It wasn't just Brandon Cooks or just Josh Reynolds. Or I thought Sean McVay called a great game. I thought he had a couple of like reverses and quick passes that were right there and wide open. And what can you say about the pickup of C.J. Anderson? The entire league missed on, and with Gurley obviously hurt. I mean, you don't play the best running back in the league 7 plays if he's not hurt.
Here's just a modicum of hope for you Jag fans out there, a little morsel, if you will. Les Snead, who was once with the Jacksonville Jaguars, is a real good dude. Knew him back in the 90s as a young guy here in Jacksonville. Was a GM with the Rams and seemingly botched every draft pick, every call. He and Fisher drove the team into just awfulness. And Les Snead survived.
And some of those players aren't so bad.
And
right, Gurley and Goff aren't busts. I mean, they're good players.
It was then he started to pick the right guys with the second go round. And so, you know, that's the hope that we have around here.
The Rams are interesting from the standpoint, too, is that, you know, typically you do not build your team by trade and free agency, and they did an awful lot of that, right? Mm-hmm. All right? They did from signing in Ndamukong Suh. Don't forget both corners were veterans that had question marks, Talib and Mark. Credit to what they do. Credit Marcus Peters yesterday, by the way.
Yeah, he played great.
He talked a lot last week about wanting his shot at redemption, and after Michael Thomas absolutely torched them in the regular season meeting, he was, quiet as a church mouse yesterday. So credit to Talib and Peters, 2 guys they went and got in free agency. They were aggressive in going and get Brandon Cooks, and signing him up. They were very, very smart. Robert Woods is a hell of a football player and emphasizes Buffalo's incompetence for having him for 3 or 4 years and getting nothing out of him. You're right. It's a team that and firing Jeff Fisher and the quarterback killer and allowing that offense to blossom and become good. And,
by the way, now that Sean McVay is going to the Super Bowl, you can expect even more Sean McVay clones coming into the NFL. If you're 30 to 35 and you got a good reputation for calling up some ball plays,
well, as you've said often, you have to be good looking too.
And you're good looking. Get your resume in, and you'll get a job.
Beef has done the exact work, and we talked about the Patriots, and we do need to give them a lot of credit. It is unbelievable, but consider that from 1981 to 99, 18 years for the 49ers. They missed the playoffs twice, and they won 5 Super Bowls. In that same time period, the Patriots have missed the Super Bowl once, and they've won 5 Super Bowls. Now, the 49ers didn't go lose Super Bowls like the Patriots have. So the Patriots, but in terms of just flat-out success in an 18-year period, that 49er team is pretty much on par. Of course, like you said, they had, Charles Haley on defense in the Hall. They had Montana in the Hall. They had Steve Young in the Hall. They had Joey Rice in the Hall. They had a lot of Hall of Famers there. As well. Dan, is it just a midseason slump and nothing to be too concerned about, or have we, as an Achilles heel in FSU basketball, been revealed in a terrible week of back-to-back losses to Pitt. Now, look, I'm not saying they're not a tournament team, Dan, but they look like they could have. A couple of weeks ago, we were wondering about could they. In fact, I think we may have deemed it more likely they're Final Four than the Gators in the tournament.
Yeah.
So what has happened to Florida State basketball?
I think they've hit a little bump in the road.
That's all.
I don't think they're.
That Duke loss probably took more out of them than you realized.
Maybe. The Pitt game was deplorable, but they had them on the Monday night right after Saturday with Duke, and you could see that one coming from a mile away. Boston College is inexcusable. They let them shoot 62% behind the arc. That's not good enough for Leonard's guys. I think they'll right the ship and get into the tournament, and I think they're certainly capable of making a run. Something tells me this sort of thing happened last year too, and then they were sort of kind of a dark horse going into the tournament, and then they got on a little bit of a roll.
They were like a 7 seed.
I like this team. I think this team will be okay, but don't let it slip away. You have Clemson and Miami this week, and the Miami game is, I believe, down there. You need to right the ship.
You need a couple of wins.
Get a couple dubs here. Look, 2 of those losses are Duke and Virginia, so it is what it is at this point. I would not lose total faith at all in FSU, but certainly a bigger bump in the road than I had anticipated.
And by the way, college basketball's last 2 undefeated teams both lost on Saturday.
Yes.
Michigan lost to Wisconsin, and I watched that Duke-Virginia game, all of it. For the first complete basketball game I've watched, I had involved one of my teams. And Virginia played tough. Played them tough.
And we had an interesting text exchange going back and forth between Zion and
watching for the full 40
and Barrett, which one might be a better player, and that's why I honestly want this. I want the Knicks to win the second pick, so that we'll just take whoever.
Make the hard choice.
Let them make the hard choice because we'll screw it up.
I'm not sure Barrett won't be number one. And we talked a lot about Zion.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't. Watching them, I'm not sure I wouldn't go that way. But we'll see.
Yeah, it'll be fun. One more college basketball note to you. Look, I don't think the Gators were going to get to the tourney this year because, again, Georgia's not a very good team, and the Gators did win, but because of their inefficiency on offense, they are going to be in every game. I mean, even the bad teams are going to have a hard time putting away. But with all that said, losing Keith Stone is a tough one. He was not having a good year, but he was having a good game and seemingly starting to come out of maybe his malaise that he's been in. But the bigger issue is he's an inside guy. Mike White said he's the only true 4 we have on the roster before the injury. So what now?
Well, Isaiah Stokes needs to get on the treadmill. And remember those things? I doubt they ever worked. They'd have those like leather or rubber bands, and you'd hook them up to the treadmill, and they'd shake your belly. You just like shake it. You know what I'm talking about? Remember those things back in the day? They need to get Isaiah Stokes on one of those things, or I don't know, sew his mouth shut, or whatever it takes to keep him under 400 pounds. That would help. I do think that in a season that very few of us believe will be a tournament year, it might be a blessing in disguise. I mean, you've gone young anyway. Keontae Johnson had already been put into the starting lineup. Go little, go young, and let guys get experience and try and make the NIT this year, get a couple extra games. And the future's bright. Florida has 3 top 35 in ESPN's rankings. 3 of the top 35 players in the country are signed to come play for Florida next year. So they had good recruiting. They've had good recruiting. I think Mike White is a heck of a coach. Believe it or not, he's still through the same amount of games, has a better record than Billy Donovan had at this point. So I would
Chip.
No, you shut up. I would encourage Gator fans just to kind of hold the fort down. But it's a huge loss. They're not a great team anyway, and Stone's versatility is unmatched on that team.
All right, let's do caller number 2. Beef, what are they getting today this week?
What a prize pack. Caller number 2 at 641-1010 is going to take home $20, a gift card from 1,000 Degrees Pizza. You can use it at their new location on Southside.
That's
also
hot,
get a
by
gift
the way.
card from
That's
our
Hot,
friends
hot toasty pizza.
at Zips Express Car Wash.
Oh, beautiful.
Caller 2.
Let's go.